Welcome back to another episode of the Polldale podcast. You're here with myself, Katja Williams, and I'm here with my husband, Ned. We're taking you behind the scenes of the stud cattle breeding, livestock production, and life here at Polldale Shorthorns. In this episode, we're going to be tackling one of the most common questions we hear both from seed stock and commercial producers, and that is what actually makes a good bull. Whether you're buying your first bull, investing in herd genetics, or simply wanting to understand what separates an average sire from an exceptional one, this conversation is for you. Ned has spent his entire life around cattle and has been involved in breeding, selecting and marketing of Shorthorn bulls for many years. Together we'll discuss the traits that really matter, from structure, fertility, temperament and longevity through to performance data, genetics and the practical characteristics that help a bull work in real world commercial operations. At the end of the day, a good bull isn't just the one that looks impressive in the sale ring. A truly good bull is the one that leaves profitable, productive daughters, sired calves that perform and continue to deliver value to a breeding program for years and years. So grab your cuppa, settle down, whether you're in the ute, in the tractor, or listening somewhere down the paddock. This episode is for you. What makes a good bull? Ned, thank you very much for joining me again today to talk about the Polldale Shorthorn operation and what makes a good bull.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Ned, in our first episode on the podcast, we did a little bit about the Williams history, Polldale Shorthorns history, and we spoke a lot about the cow herd and general traits. But we quite often get from new buyers talking to kids through the Junior Shorthorn show and some of the other junior heifer shows that we've been to, what makes a good bull? So where do you start and why Shorthorns?
To us, that was the same question Bidar had years and years and years ago. And it nearly wasn't Shorthorns for us. It was actually nearly Herefords and almost Sanders as well at one stage, when Bidar was trying to decide with Dar where and these other brothers where they should go. And the reason they'll push towards Shorthorns, I think, from what I've been told through the history, is through the maternal characteristics. And that mainly becomes from the basis of the Shorthorn herds, very British, very settled in that regard, those characteristics. But they're very maternal in the way that they're all basically out of dairy Shorthorns. That's where their heritage and that's where their history comes from. All the beef Shorthorns and those other breeds come from dairy Shorthorns. So obviously they were selected for their ability to milk and raise a calf. And those characteristics that they were culled for generations and generations all through Europe are really instilled into the Shorthorn gene code, and they still come through today, because it's not uncommon to even get a culled Shorthorn cow or a Shorthorn cow or an older cow to still be really maternal when she has a calf and put everything into a calf at the sacrifice of herself, which means that she puts that much into her milk, her frame score drops considerably while she's lactating and producing for a calf and putting all her energy and effort into a calf. And I think that was a really big factor why we originally went to Shorthorns, because productivity is king, because there's no point in having a great calf next year when you should have had one this year as well. And Shorthorns help do that, definitely.
I think an interesting way at looking at today's topic of what makes a good bull is kind of framing it around the question of what is the things that people think matters versus what actually does matter.
Well, that's a great question, because we're seeing a lot of it. A lot of young breeders, and this is across all breeds and all studs too, they're chasing this or they're chasing that. And one thing we learned, particularly through the generations, is you can't single trait chase. And that comes back to if you just focus on performance, for argument's sake, everything's performance. You just want performance, you keep chasing it. Eventually, you're going to lose softness, you're going to lose doability. And if you just instill that single trait in your herd, you hit a hard time, a dry time, a drought. And all of a sudden, your animals are doing nowhere near as well as the others, because you've gone so far down one track. It's very hard to come back from. And that puts you into a corner for your herd where your back's against the wall, where you have to use a bull that may take you backwards, but it'll instill those traits back into your herd that you need, like the ability to lay down fat.
What are some of the trends you do see coming through, not only the Shorthorn breed, but other breeds that, come and go? We spoke about that very briefly in our first episode, but I think there's definitely more trends that come than needs to be.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting because the trends that come generally they're like a wave. You see them coming, you see some outlying studs and outlying bloodlines pushing that way, and then you got to realize too that's marketing 101. Having an outlier is great because it separates you, and B, you can advertise it because nobody else has seldom got it. So it puts you out on a pedestal straight away. And it's easy to market something that's a little bit different than what everyone's already has. So again, that's marketing 101. And once that's done really well, for Angus and McDonald's, for instance, once that was done really well, everyone flocks to that. Then all of a sudden it creates momentum, and that's a very hard thing to break. Once everyone's got it, then everyone has it. And then it looks for the next wave, the next thing on the horizon, and it comes and crashes in, and the process repeats. Which is why we've always shared the adage that you don't chase those big trends and those big waves. You ride the waves out and you try and find a happy medium that suits you, because at the end of the day, you've got to meet market specs. And there's no trait for 3 legs on an animal. You really have to check those basic things and meet your basic specs, because an animal that's a female that you have that's produced all her life has many, many calves, and then you sell her for a profit because she puts down the body fat and she's a muscly older cow, and she sells for quite a bit over the yards. Well, that's a job well done for not only you as a breeder, but for her end as well, because she's done her purpose, she's served her time, and at the end of the day, she's remained profitable and put productivity on the line. So I think a lot of the trends sort of take away from that if you allow yourself to get stuck in them. So I think it's important to take a step back sometimes and say, yeah, everyone is going that way, but is that way right for me and what I want to do, and how you're going to continue to service your clients and what they want and what their needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what we want to know is, Ned, when you enter into a paddock and you're looking at bulls, or you're at a sale and you're looking at a pen of bulls in front of you, what are you looking for? What makes a sire stand out for you that you want to bring back into the Polldale breeding herd?
What we look for is just the basics, and they come in many forms. Start at the head, work your way down. Big open face, open ears, strong muscle, well-hooded eye. You look for those things, for obvious reasons, but they're based in layman's terms, they're signs of constitution. Good neck extension, good shoulder set. You want good neck extension because then it must be able to lift its head. Good shoulder set, so they're not too far forward, they're not sloped, they're just right, because then those right angles give good feet in the front end. Behind the shoulder, you want full. You want nice fullness there. You don't want what they call the devil's pinch. When they pinch up behind the shoulders, you want spring of rib. Meat along the spine, and nice width between the front and back end, because width at the bottom and width at the top generally means you've got meat throughout. You look behind the animal, good stones, good udder, strong spine, and good hip to pin placement. Basically, that's what you're after in an animal. Then you get off the animal and watch them walk around the ring, the paddock, the yard, wherever you may be. They have to be able to move well. So basically, you're covering your production, your meat, and your softness. You're covering your mobility through structural correctness and the ability to track well around the yards or ring, wherever they are. And you're covering the fertility and their ability to do their job. Because in our opinion, the bull's got to look like a bull. He's got to have size, appeal, and presence, and he's got to be reproductively sound. A female, she has to be maternal, lovely, long body, length of neck, very feminine, and she's got to have that good udder set. And I think if you stick to cattle like that, and particularly with bulls like that, then there's very little way of going wrong in those regards, because a bull may not have one trait, but he has 4 or 5 other really good ones, and you need 3 out of those 4. One thing I've learned, particularly the last few years, is you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if the bull's going to do more good than harm, and he's going to put you on the right track, and there's nothing else good around at the moment, then you are more likely better off to use him than waiting for something that may not appear for a number of years.
And we were talking with Introduced Genetics recently about how important the feet set is when you're watching those sire lines come through. And the importance of that is because of their practical mating. So tell us a little bit about that.
That's a good point, because the reason I bring foreign bloodlines is because it's easy to see the animal as they are. but it's very difficult to see their heritage and the other animals that allow them to come into existence. And what I mean by that is when we select a bull or a female that we want to introduce into a herd, we always try and look at the parentage, particularly the mother, because you've got to remember the mum's only 50%, the dad's only 50%, and the environment's the triggering factor whether you see what they're genetically capable of. It's the old phenotype, genotype setup. So you really have to look at the parentage and their heritage to really understand where the animal's coming from, what they're going to do. So that's one of the things you've got to be careful about using genetics where you don't have access to the whole bloodlines. But if you are able to research that, then it does make you feel a lot more comfortable in using those lines. It gives you confidence, which is good, particularly because decisions you make today, you find out in 2 years' time whether they're any good. In 2 years' time, you've already made another set of decisions where you find out whether they're any good in 3 years' time. So it's an ongoing process where what you do today, you won't find out the consequences for a long, long time afterwards.
For someone who's coming into the market new, whether they're a new breeder, they're new to Shorthorns, they're looking for that cross hybrid vigor, why the Shorthorn, and why does picking these particular traits that we're looking for in our stock matter?
Well, I'll just break that down. Well, why Shorthorn first? If you look at all the composite breeds up north, AACO, NAPCO, the other massive companies, and they're running millions of acres, hundreds of people employed. They're big operations and they can't afford to have any downs in productivity. So they need performance and softness and doability, particularly in those areas of that country because the environments vary so much. You look at those operations and there's Shorthorn in there everywhere you look. And I think a lot of it comes back to the maternal characteristics too of the Shorthorns. And that's why I think Shorthorns are so adaptable. The original breeds up north in Queensland were Shorthorns and Herefords. A lot of people forget that. They think Queensland and think Brahman. But Shorthorns and Herefords were the original breeds up there. And that's a very interesting bit of history to be reminded of, that those cattle, particularly Shorthorns, are very adaptable. And that's something to remember as well for those areas. And the reason I think a lot of people cross those traits and instill them in breeds like the composite breeds, which composite breeds are made up of many different breeds in one, is because the hybrid vigor that comes through, particularly from the Shorthorns side of things, is very, very dominant. And that's generally the softness, the doability, the performance, and the maternal characteristics. And that comes across in your females and your males that generally get cut for steers. And I think that's why they make such a good cross and why they've been utilised so much up north as well as down south. Because you think about Shorthorns, they've come from England and then they've come to Australia, the most ancient continent in the world, where the environment varies so much from England. And then similar to England, a few areas too. And Shorthorns have adapted. And they've proven it by staying there through the ages, through the years and decades that have happened since then. And they're still there in a lot of areas. Sure, other breeds have come in and they've adapted too, but the common denominator really originally was the Shorthorn. And I think that's why they're so popular and why the impact that they've had is so great. And even though Angus have a very large piece of that market share at the moment, Shorthorns, through the efforts of modern breeding techniques and people really hanging on to the breed and really pushing forward and pushing the boundary and envelope of what's acceptable and what's marketable and what's productive, have really stayed current in today's current market. It really is fantastic seeing it. It is a good thing to be part of, and that's why I'd recommend not only considering Shorthorns if you're thinking about coming in, but staying with Shorthorns if you have Shorthorns too.
Ned, you mentioned previously in today's episode that it can be 2 to 3 years between when you make the decision and you see the outcome. And, in that time, you've already made subsequent decisions. For someone who thinks that sounds really overwhelming, or for someone who thinks, well, if you make a wrong answer, have you reduced the profitability of your business? What would you say to that?
I'd say give yourself some grace because everyone makes wrong decisions. Give yourself time because you've got plenty of it. You've got 2 years to figure out whether it was a good decision or not. So give yourself time to look and to think and to see what's actually happening in front of you. But what I would suggest to you is the thing that you can work on right now is work on your female herd and what's in your female herd. because the way I've described it at shows and when I've given lectures and talks about selection and animal selection is the beauty of having a female herd all the time is you select your animals and you have them as similar type as you can. And then when you select a bull, generally what you get is a similar result. So that makes your bull selection a lot easier. So if you got 2 mobs of 40 cows and you're looking at 2 different bulls, you can split your cows up, you get your higher performers, you get your lower performers. It makes it very easy to pick which bull goes to which. If you have a lot of variation in your herd, then it's very hard to pick a bull because you have to take into account all your different variations. So the less variation you have in your female herd, the more consistent they are, the easier it is to select your bull. And once it's easier to select your bull, it gives you a lot more confidence. And once you have that confidence, it makes you feel a lot more easy about your decisions. It allows you to stop second-guessing yourself. Because generally, regardless of the animals you pick, generally the only effect that you have is your calving ease. And if you make a bad decision there or a decision that could have been better, then your calving ease really affects the amount of your productivity because the live calves are gold. And if you don't get live calves, then you don't have your income. But generally, if you can get the live calf on the ground, you're not going backwards, you're treading water. It's just important to remember that once you get that out, once you see how your animals are breeding, it's important to take note of what's worked well, what hasn't, and then you're making an educated guess moving forward. And that's how you eliminate that uncertainty, eliminate that worry, and manage your expectations when you start calving and when they start growing up, and how you move forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ned, Polldale's run the junior breeding program for a few years now, and we've had some great success stories come out of that, working alongside some young Shorthorn producers. What advice was key to giving to them to build on their female herd to select the correct sires for the direction that they wanted their stud to go?
Oh, definitely. It's funny you mention that, Kat, because we've had stud women as well, so you know. But we've had a fantastic response to the youth program, and we've greatly appreciated everyone who's been part of that and contributed to it. And we're very happy to see people use our genetics and to see them get good results. But our main advice to them was, okay, what do you have right now and where do you want to go? Because where we want to go as Polldale may be different to your own goals. So what do you want to produce? What country you're on? Do you have feed all year round? Are you looking to seasonally raise your cattle and adjust somewhere else? Or are you going to supplementary feed throughout? You know, supplementary feed and graze on country that's not producing as much. Obviously, you want something that's a little bit early maturing. Something that you want to grow out on country, you know, from their parents' farm perspective. They want more of a veal type, later maturing to hit the 400, 500, 600 kilogram market steers. They want something later maturing. So it really came down to their own personal opinion, but basically what we wanted them to really understand the importance of just correctness, softness, doability, and muscle. And you get those factors, you get that with structural correctness, and there's really very little you can go wrong because the calves you're going to produce are going to be functional and perform. It really is seeing how your animals perform and how they handle it. Then the following year you make a better informed decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And through that program, we got lots of questions about EBVs, which is the new system coming through with all your predictions and your data and your metrics, versus old school methodology, which is what we tend to lean into, more those cattleman type traits and looking at the animal in front of you as a whole as well as their breed line. So when you start to bring EBVs through that educational element, how do you use EBVs to choose a sire versus old school?
We use a combination of both at the moment. And we're not saying one overrides the other, but a bull has to look a certain way for us to consider them. We see in our herd traits that have come through from using other people's bulls that we didn't want to go that way, that we didn't want to go that direction, so we've culled for those traits. So if we see those traits in an animal, we're less likely to consider that animal unless they're really exceptional in other areas. Now, if what we do as a stud is if we all like an animal, as we all think they've got something to contribute, we'll then look at their figures. We'll then consider the top three, which is generally stability, birth weight, and marbling. Those three IGS figures, they're one of the bigger factors that contribute to the end score on the API index on the end of the program, and that affects your grade marking in the IGS program. Now, IGS is an American-based program, and things to remember is that your measurements in there are in pounds. Your fat trait is up to a certain point, that once the animal exceeds those fat characteristics, it actually scales against that animal too. And stayability is between 4 to 6 years. And they're for animals that have been repeatedly used in the stud. It doesn't account for a lot of people who keep their cows to 8, 9, 10 years old and they're still productive and they're still doing their job and their purpose. And weaning weight, all that stuff's all in pounds too. So they're things you have to realise as well, that it's been moved and manipulated for the Australian market, but the way it's measured hasn't been adapted. It's still imperial and hasn't been moved to metric, and there's no sign that's going to happen. There are 3 or 4 more new figure forms coming out, so they have to be looked at too. But generally, we use IGS figures as an icebreaker between decisions. If we see 3 really good bulls, 2 of them have really got good figures, one's got poor figures, but he's a better bull, generally we will really consider the better bull before we go for the other bull's figures. Because what you also have to realise is that a lot of the data and the figures input comes down to how much data is present. Now, Australia's herd of Shorthorns is quite low compared to the Americans. So we can't get the amount of data in that's going to make a proper influence on that data set that's available. So we have to rely on other people inputting data to be able to boost up the figures to A, make them more accurate, and B, more represent what the animal actually is. Because we have animals that measure really low in certain characteristics, and you feed up their progeny and knock them over and you get the kill data. It doesn't represent what's on that sheet, and that comes back to data input. And the old adage is kill data is king. So if you want an animal that has 7 mil on fat on the rib and 10 on the rump, and you knock them over and they're 8 and 9, that's pretty damn close. And kill data is what it is. It can't be manipulated or changed through data input. So kill data is really king, and we use that other stuff as it's meant to be, as a tool to help us make informed decisions. But at the end of the day, you've got to pick a bull you like. And if you're really stuck, you've got to pick the bull you need. It's best to talk to other people, get their opinions too, because if you're looking at a problem right there, right close to your face, it's very hard to get caught up in that. And sometimes it's really good to get a second opinion, like talking to your wife, and and that gives you another perspective on what you're looking at too, which is always useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Ned, if you could summarise, 1 or 2 takeaways for anyone who's listening to today's episode of what makes a great bull, what would they be?
Honestly, what do you want to produce and where do you want to go? Write that down on a piece of paper. Then go out to your herd and look at them unbiased and laterally and write down what you see. And then write down the bull you need for where your cattle are lacking or what you want to put in your herd to meet your market. You get those 3 things together on paper, not so you can see it, so when you look at an animal, you're reminded of it. Because it's easy to look at a mob of bulls and think, oh, they're really good, they got this, and this, and I need this, and this, and you go home to your herd and go, I already got that and that. I really needed that. And that other bull had that. And I didn't get that because I saw a lot of this, so I got this. So it really comes down to recognising where you are, where you want to be, and how you get there, which comes back to the fact that you've got to have a good natural variation in your cattle, which again comes back to the selection of your female herd, and that allows the selection of your bull to be a lot easier, a lot safer, and give you confidence in your ability to make decisions.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 of the Polldale Shorthorns series. We hope you've enjoyed What Makes a Good Bull. If you've missed our first episode, which is a brief look into the Polldale history, the family behind it, and how we got to where we are today, go back and listen to episode 1. But if you've loved what you've listened to and you want to hang out for a bit, we're heading into episode 3, which is the family behind the prefix, where we'll deep dive more into the modern family here, right now, talking about Ned's, my family, and what we're looking forward to bringing you in the Polldale stud into the future. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Polldale podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up a few tips and information that you might be able to take back into your operation. To learn more about Polldale Shorthorns, head over to the website www.polldalestudshorthorns.com or give us a follow over on the socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to see the cattle in person, reach out to Ned and have an inspection, or we'll see you on sale day on our on-property bull sale. The sale offers a selection of quality stud shorthorn bulls backed by generations of breeding, fertility, temperament, performance, and longevity. For sale date, catalogue, inspection opportunities, please visit us over on the socials or send us an email. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And share with a friend who you think might like to listen to this episode. Until next time, this is Katja and Ned Williams from Polldale Shorthorns signing off. We'll see you on the next one. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you might also enjoy Katja Williams' other podcasts. She has The Ultimate Farm Wife, interviewing female farmers, farm wives, and those who are integrating into or back into family farming businesses. You might also like Absolutely Fabulous with co-host Gillian Fennell, where Katja and Gillian jump into all things agriculture beyond the headlines and closing the urban and rural divide. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share with someone you know will enjoy these podcasts too.